Welcome to the ODDSBREAKER'S #1 place for shared, sharp betting information.
My friends, the madness of March, as well as the sadness. Welcome back to podcast 22 of 2021. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the ODDSBREAKERS. Follow us on social media / the ODDSBREAKERS. This episode is being brought to you by mybookie.ag. For a 200% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie and use the promo code ODDS200. Terms, conditions, and location apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs and sponsor the website and the podcast, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $24.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free Picks newsletter subscriber. And my friends, we are going to be rolling through the baseball season with premium plays for all members this summer as well. What a fun NCAA tournament.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
We have some Cinderellas and we have some disappointments, my friends. Oral Roberts. Pure madness. Woo! Illinois and Ohio State. Pure sadness. Not to mention some other schools like Texas that crapped out in the first round. Iowa, number 2, getting destroyed by Oregon, who got to skip a game due to COVID. How unreal is that for VCU? Only COVID so far, so we'll take it. You have Oklahoma State losing to Oregon State. Sadness. But Oregon State making it to the Sweet 16. Pure madness. And then obviously Florida thought they had it easy against Oral Roberts. Didn't make it in. We have number 4 Purdue losing in the first round to North Texas. Just pure madness, my friends. And it's a lot more than filling out brackets because we're sports bettors here. And this is the fun part because the tournament's going to be fun for us throughout the whole darn thing.
So hot right now.
And my friends, from a pure betting standpoint, we are doing pretty good. We had a great day on Friday, a medium day on Saturday, up like 1.7 units. Had to work hard for that one. And a great day on Sunday, went 5-1. And then Monday we went 2-6. But for the tournament so far, we are 29, 17-1 ATS in totals, not including money line sprinkles, which some of those sprinkles came through pretty hard. Like Oral Roberts, we were on them both games. So some of those sprinkles really pay off when you are doing it. But we're here to talk about the Sweet 16. And we have a great guest today. Simon from ShotQuality.com is going to come on and break down his awesome website and the Sweet 16 games. Very excited for that. Simon developed a site that predicts games based upon the quality of shots that teams take, along with everything else, like the rebounds, the quality of rebounding, the quality of defensive shots. So it's also measuring the opponent's shot quality. It's a little bit different than the Ken Palms, the Bart Torviks, the Haslametrixes that we use. So I'm very excited to learn more about his site and how well he's doing in the NCAA. He does have some college teams that are clients of his, and he's expanded into the sports wagering world. So very excited for him to come on. Before he comes on, I want to talk about our bracket challenge. It's doing pretty well for some people and bad for others. So I'm going to quick go over our standings here. Okay. We have Brad Toussaint that's in first place, but unfortunately he has Illinois, so that's most likely going to drop. He's tied with Karen that also has Illinois. Now, if Oral Roberts comes and wins this thing, maybe they end up in the Final Four with Oregon State, and on the other side you might have UCLA and like Oregon, then they still might win this thing. But obviously, the chances of that are pretty slim. But either way, great job through the first couple rounds here, guys. And the next one, we have Greg Rogers. Greg Rogers has his Final Four still alive, but he has Baylor. And congrats to him because he has Baylor versus Gonzaga and Baylor winning, and he has in his Final Four Gonzaga, Alabama, Baylor, and Illinois. So he has 3 of his 4 Final Four left. I think if you have 3 of your 4 Final Four left and they're not number 1 seeds, maybe not all of them, right? You have a chance to place, if not win this thing. You know, that's the good thing about it. Who's next is Mateo Cisneros. I don't know if I pronounced his name correct. He's got Michigan and winning it all. And then my son, Dane, he's actually next. And he has close to the same thing as Greg Rogers, but he has Bama beating Gonzaga. So if Alabama gets to the final game with Baylor, he might win if Baylor wins. Or he would win if Baylor wins. And if Alabama wins, I suppose he probably would win because I don't see anybody else with Alabama winning it. So congrats to you guys. Victor Rose is also tied there as well. So interesting tournament. But like I said, nobody's out of this if you still have 3 of the 4 Final Four teams and the final 2 teams. And maybe you have like a Florida State or an Alabama, just like I mentioned, or you have maybe even Oregon or something in your Final Four. You certainly have a shot, right? So that's the fun thing about filling out brackets is that even though the number 1 seed Illinois dropped, you still have a shot. Next, I want to cover these tournament futures. And I just wanted to say that they're absolutely awful odds. Terrible odds for these futures. And the reason that is because Gonzaga is plus 150, and they're going to be massive favorites even over Baylor or Michigan, like 6 or 7 point favorites here. Okay? So if you take anybody that's like 20-1 or 30-1, and you actually think they have a legitimate shot to beat Gonzaga, you could do a money line rollover and do way better. I mean, let's face it. Let's look at the brackets. Gonzaga is the biggest favorite here in the Sweet 16, and then Arkansas is second. Arkansas is a top 15 KenPom team. I mean, I'd rather take them at 20-1 than Michigan at 9-1. Heck, Michigan's plus 700 if they face Gonzaga, right? It's ridiculous. Houston plus 900? Terrible prices. Loyola plus 1,600? Not good. I mean, Loyola's probably going to be favored maybe even a little bit against Houston. That's going to be really close to pick 'em. But still, if you did a money line rollover on Loyola just to get to the Final Four, that's a couple games you're rolling over. And then against Baylor, they would be dogs. And then Gonzaga, they're going to be like 10-1, 12-1. Terrible prices on these. Even Oral Roberts at 80-1, they'd be a massive dog to Gonzaga. Probably like 25-1 or something. So I just want to mention that these odds are terrible. And if you have a future, I'm not even sure it's worth it unless you have over 100-1 on any of these teams, even the bigger teams, to start hedging. I think the only time you can start hedging right now is if you're on the opposite side of Gonzaga on the Elite Eight, or if you're on the same side of Gonzaga, you know, the same like the East and West brackets, probably the Final Four. Just wait till you get to there. You can also take a future on Gonzaga at plus 150 just to somewhat hedge that, but you also treat it as an independent bet because your team might not even get to the Final Four still, but yes, you're still betting on Gonzaga to win it all. I mean, you see what Gonzaga is doing to these opponents. They're the best team from an efficiency standpoint since the Villanova Wildcats of 2017, and I still think they might be slightly better. I don't know yet, though. Villanova was pretty awesome that year, if you remember. But anyways, just wanted to mention that. Before Simon comes on, I want to give you a NIT play for Thursday. And I'm not in love with the NIT this year, but NC State, I think, is better than Colorado State. And here's why. NC State had a great finish to their season, winning 5 ACC games in a row against Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, Virginia, Pittsburgh again, and Notre Dame. And then they lost in the ACC tournament to Syracuse. Well, we're finding out that loss wasn't so bad, was it? And then all of a sudden, they came in and beat Davidson by 14 points. A pretty good Davidson team. That shows you two things. That shows you, A, NC State is motivated to win this thing, right? Motivated. And B, they have more talent than most of the teams in this tournament. I mean, Colorado State's a nice team, and they're ranked very close to NC State on KenPom. But what we're finding out is the Mountain West isn't quite as good as we thought, right? I mean, when you have teams like Utah State losing to Texas Tech by double digits in the first round of the NCAA tournament, that's not a good look. And then when you have San Diego State, who lost to Syracuse as well, but by 16 points, that's not looking so good for the conference either. So now I scratch my head and wonder if this conference is a little bit overrated. But NC State's got the talent, in my opinion. NC State's got the motivation, which is very important. They're also doing it for the ACC. And what it looks like to me, Kevin Keats is trying to prepare for next year. His kids are motivated. Let's take NC State for a few stars at -1 or pick them.
The dynasty has just begun.
Without further ado, my friends, let's bring on Simon from ShotQuality.com. And now I'm very pleased to welcome for the first time on this podcast a man who is making a splash in the sports betting industry, Mr. Simon Gerszburg from ShotQuality.com. You can follow him on Twitter at @shot_quality. Simon, we are into the Sweet 16, my man. How is the tournament going for you?
It's going well. My bracket's busted already, but I'm pleased to be here and very happy to talk with all the tasty bets coming up on the Sweet 16 slate.
Awesome, man. I think most people can say their bracket's busted here, so nothing new for that. But, that's not why we're here. We're here to have fun. When you're able to bet on every single game or pass on them or do whatever you want, in-game props, there's actually props on players right now, too. We make the whole tournament fun, and that's the greatest thing about sports betting in general. But you seem to have a big affinity for college basketball. So why don't you explain to our listeners what ShotQuality.com is and how it's different from some of the other efficiency sites out there?
Yeah, so basically the way Shot Quality works is it works in expected value. So based off the expected percentages of each individual player and each individual player in each area. So when Corey Kispert takes an off-the-dribble three, it's an X% shot. When Evan Mobley has a post-up on the right block and a hook shot, it's an X% shot. So it's based off each individual player's individual percentages. So the origin story with Shot Quality is I was calculating all this stuff by hand for the Colgate basketball team. We had a tough loss to Arkansas in the round of 64. But, so I was calculating it by hand, and it was just such an exhaustive process. I knew I had to find a way to automate it. So once I was able to do so, it clearly was a product that Colgate was using for their staff. So once I knew it was valuable, I knew it could be valuable for all of college basketball. So since then, we got a good amount of college basketball teams on board, like Indiana, Texas, Stanford. And now I'm kind of trying to enter the predictive modeling space. Just in the last few weeks, we kind of just released the predictive modeling resource on our website, and it's been pretty successful so far, I could say, which is definitely good.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. So I'm guessing you have not only sports bettors that are starting to get interested, but you originally did this for college basketball teams, and some of them are becoming your clients, correct?
Yeah. So right now, I think we ended up getting 30 college basketball teams sign up. A lot more high major than I expected, which is definitely good to see. And then hopefully next year we'll just keep building that out.
Wow, absolutely. That's awesome. So it sounds like we're kind of in the beginning stages of this website, and it could literally, the sky's the limit, right?
I hope so. You never know. Yeah, I mean, it was launched in October, so it really wasn't that long ago. And it's kind of crazy how quickly the word is spread. But yeah, we'll see how it continues to grow for sure.
Awesome. So why did you come up with this idea to get this into a website and start promoting it? And how did you see the value in doing that?
So the value originally was because the assistant on the Colgate staff, Dave Klatsky, he kind of originated the idea in Excel, basically like calculating the expected percentages. So like, we'll give an example for like a previous Colgate game last season. Basically, there are around 5 to 10 games in each season which can be constituted as a lucky or unlucky win or loss for that team. Basically, Colgate has had so many. So has every team. I'll actually use the Kansas USC game as an example, which was the most recent game on Monday night. Basically, there are games where players shoot way above their expected percentages. So USC, I believe, shot 65% from three that game, and Kansas, I think, shot 20% from three. So despite the fact that USC won the game by 30 points, basically based off the quality of looks both teams got, USC was only supposed to win the game by 2 points. And I know that sounds crazy if you're just throwing out like these crazy numbers, but if you really broke down every single possession, which is what we do, and the possession quality and what the expected value truly was on each of those, that's what came out, which was obviously shocking to a lot of Kansas fans and USC fans on Twitter. But we have no bias here. We're just delivering the objective numbers, I guess you say.
Well, it's great that you brought up an example of one of them just didn't turn out, right? The shots itself should have. So it's funny, as people are so, well, I guess one-track minded, that, they think, Kansas, if they played them 50 times, they're going to lose that game. Well, your shot quality site might tell you start betting on Kansas in this situation. If they play again and are able to do the same types of shots that they did, then more time than not, they're going to cover and possibly even win that game, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, so it's so hard to think of it that way because everyone's mind is so result-oriented and outcome-based. But really, if you could think beyond and really just think beyond the outcome, really just look at the look they're getting and the shot attempt, yeah, it is kind of the more valuable way to look, I guess.
Well, and that's what, some of the sharper sports bettors want, because they know that they're only going to win 53 to 56% of their bets in the long run. And that's just because of the randomness of it. But 56% is actually a very large return on investment, especially compared to what you can get in like a CD or a mutual fund or a government bond if you're hitting that every single year. So it's very important information. And, we don't care about losing 44 games out of 100. As long as we're winning 56, that's fine. And this is the kind of data that's important for that way of thinking. So great stuff there, man. Let me ask you this. How did you get so involved in college basketball through Colgate? How did your love for it start?
Well, I got kind of lucky, I got to say. So my roommate freshman year was actually a player on the team who actually became my best friend, honestly, at Colgate. He's one of the best players on the team, too. But he kind of connected me with the coaching staff very early on. And from then, it kind of just grew. But even before then, before I got to college, I was always just really passionate into statistical trends and how it impacted competitive advantages in sports, even beyond basketball. I was doing a lot of baseball analysis, football analysis, and just continuing to, build out the shot quality website.
So young, yet such a great idea, man. So fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
Without giving too much information away, how does it work with quantifying how teams rebound the ball or possibly defensive shot quality? Is there such a thing?
Yeah, so I didn't go through this, but basically to calculate the quality of shot on each possession, there's over 90 different variables, so it really is a lot involved. the most important is like interior defense. I got to say, it's one of the most important variables. Like taking a shot in the paint against USC compared to like Colgate, let's just say, it's a drastic difference in percentage because you have Evan Mobley guarding compared to like a Colgate center. So obviously, there's going to be a significant difference in the expected percentages, which is included into the algorithm. Same thing with I think you said offensive, defensive rebounding. That's also included. So let's say North Carolina misses a shot in the paint. They're so likely to get that offensive rebound, despite it being a bad quality. Even if it's a bad shot in the paint, it actually could be a high-quality possession because they're so likely to get that offensive rebound. So all those different variables are all mixed into the formula.
Excellent. And that's what we needed to know there. Is it's also based upon, the likeliness of rebounding the ball. And I'm guessing you base upon kind of like this team shoots only 20% jump shots like Iowa, right? And then you would be like, well, that's a good thing, especially if you're playing a shorter team in the paint because they're shooting a lot in the paint. So that just drives their score up, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
All right, great stuff, man. Well, before we get into these games, has your thoughts changed on any of the conferences here as far as overall strength? I think everyone's looking at the Pac-12 right now and scratching their head, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm surprised about the Big Ten because I really, really like that. Iowa was my actually pick to win it all based off the numbers this year. I thought they were really undervalued. They had a bunch of games this year where they were putting up great quality of shots and lost. I mean, even in the Oregon game, they actually got great quality shots and lost. So maybe that's just a simple trend where they just kept getting unlucky. I don't know. But the Big Ten really surprised me how poorly they did. Mm-hmm. And then similarly, obviously, the Pac-12 was shocking, I guess you could say. Interesting enough, though, I had Oregon State and a few other teams in really oddly high up on the shot quality standings, and I was like weirded out at a point. I'm like, wait, I thought the Pac-12 was like a bad conference, but I had like Oregon State, Colorado, Arizona was really high too, Utah was really high. I was like freaked out a little bit, but I guess it ended up working out when the tourney started coming around.
Isn't it so hard you kick yourself when you're just like, I was right, the data's screaming at me, and I went against it. What the heck? And then all of a sudden, everything you thought of came to fruition, even though it wasn't a popular opinion. You could have looked great, and you're like, what the hell did I do? I mean, that happens to me.
Exactly.
Yeah. But no, I mean, but it's cool. I think what we're learning is that the top teams in each conference are about as strong as each other. I think that's fair to say from this tournament. You know? And and it's just the randomness that Iowa lost to because Oregon played out of their freaking minds. They're also getting some
so good. They played incredibly, yeah.
And they're getting crazy fouls, and it's just that buzzsaw just at the end of the first half really just took the heart and soul out of Iowa. But I thought Iowa was getting good shots too. It's just one of the randomness of the games is that they didn't go down. So, and that's why brackets are so random and people that like the colors of teams sometimes win. Hey, my son's actually in third place. So, in our bracket challenge. So he's 6 years old. So that tells you, the randomness of actually picking brackets, man.
You want to hear something funny? Somebody on my Twitter account tagged me in something. Basically, he flipped a coin on every single game, and he had around like 20 different brackets, and that coin flip basically on every single game was his most successful bracket compared to every other bracket that he put out. So he put out 20 brackets, and the coin was by far the most successful one.
Oh,
that was so funny.
Oh my God. And we use the whole coin flip thing in sports betting all the time. You got to beat the coin flip. And that, I mean, because, somebody drunk playing darts at a dartboard hitting teams could be better than you as long as you're, if you're just barely above 50% or barely below, the goal is to get over 52.5% for the season.
Exactly.
Well, let's get right into some of these games then. No, not NC State. Sorry. That was my play that we're going to be doing in the NIT. Unless you have something on NC State, because I like them this game. But
let me check. Oh, wait, the game is Thursday.
Yeah,
right?
It's Thursday. I like NC State here. Do you have any quick thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do as well. So the shot quality site basically likes NC State by 2. They've scored 71-69, which I think is actually different than I think that is a good enough difference. So, Odd Shark, I'm looking at right now, has Colorado State by 1 or 1.5, I believe. Bovado has it by 1.5. So, yeah, I really do like NC State. That's actually a good value bet there with NC State.
All right, good, because I gave it away at Pick'em earlier, so we'll see. The spread's been down, bouncing back and forth. I have NC State by 4 points. Let's move into the tournament then. Oregon State versus Loyola. Loyola's laying about 6.5 points. It's been dancing back and forth. About 125.5 is the total here. What are your thoughts on this one?
So Oregon State's obviously super hot, and they've gotten pretty consistently good quality shots. But I think Loyola Chicago is just like a level ahead of them. I think they're just a significantly higher tier. They've consistently been a top 7 team on the site. I'm so pissed. I basically had, we're talking about bracket because I obviously have to talk about it now. I had Illinois in the championship game, but I had the spread of the Loyola Chicago-Illinois game at 2 points. So basically, it was unlikely in reality that Illinois would actually make it because obviously I had Loyola Chicago rated so highly. So whatever, it was so dumb putting it that way, doing it probabilistically. But in the Oregon State Loyola Chicago game, I have Loyola Chicago, or the shot quality algorithm has it by 9 points for Loyola.
All right. Well, I had Loyola less as well, and it was one of our larger plays was Loyola plus the 7.5 and sprinkled the money line against Illinois, and that started us off to a really good day. I mean, this game is really interesting to me, but I think if you're looking at regression, Oregon State's the biggest candidate for that because Loyola's been a tip-top team all year, right? I mean, Oregon State's been playing out of their freaking minds, and they got to have a stinker. And I don't know, I just think I trust Loyola more, even at the 6.5 points, in my opinion. Now, the spread is getting up there, but it's hard to believe that this Beavers team lost to Portland this year. You know, it's hard to believe they lost back to back to the Arizona schools in a year like this as well, how down those schools are. You look at their last 2 games, Tennessee shot 33% and the Pokes shot 27%. So I think if there's a chance that Loyola is going to shoot over 40% here, which is a very good chance with Krutwig down there, Loyola could cover this spread. So I'm gonna lean with Loyola on this one, my man.
I just found I just found a crazy stat with Oregon State. I can't believe I didn't see this earlier. If Oregon State's last 4 games, so Oregon, Colorado, Tennessee, Oklahoma State, they obviously won all 4 of those games, but based off the quality of shots, they were supposed to lose every single one of them. So the Oregon game, they were supposed to lose by 8. The Colorado game, they're supposed to lose by 3. The Tennessee game, they're supposed to lose by 7. Oklahoma State game, they're supposed to lose by 5. So if you want to talk about a negative regression team, that's them.
Them. There you go, man. And some teams just, in a row, they have bad games, and that's what happened. Just like Tennessee, they're taking great shots and missing them, and it looked pretty awful. Let's move on to the next one then. Villanova versus Baylor. Baylor is about -6.5. I'm now seeing 7s. The total's at 140. And, I'll go first on this one. These teams, Baylor's playing great basketball right now. And it's kind of reminds me of what they were doing in the beginning of the Big 12 season until the COVID pause. That pause threw them off a little bit. But, what Baylor did in the non-conference against Illinois, beating them by 13, and then just running through teams, nobody's even getting close to them. It reminds me of what they're capable of. Villanova, they're also a regression candidate themselves just because Gillespie is gone. I think they're playing a little bit out of their minds to cover for Gillespie, but that can only last so long. Let's face it, Villanova had an easy run to the Sweet 16, having to face Winthrop in North Texas, who couldn't hit sand, spiking a volleyball on Mission Beach. So, Nova, they're great at turnovers, but Baylor ranks 3rd at forcing turnovers, 24.7% of possessions here. My biggest play is the over because I don't think Baylor's defense is quite up to what it should be, and they do allow a high 2 and high 3 point percentage. But I have Baylor by 9, and I didn't take the side, but I really like the over in this game. Over 140.5 is I think where it's at. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I really do like the over as well. I liked it when it opened at. It opened at 131.5 originally. So, so the score prediction that I had, or the algorithm had, was 75-68 for Baylor, which essentially is a 143 over. And then it has Baylor by 7. But because the algorithm doesn't necessarily include Gillespie's full impact for Villanova, I would guess that the spread really should be like 8 or like 9 or 10 actually. So the way the algorithm works is it values more recent games more compared to the holistic season. So like it's going to value like 5 to 10 games, the top 5 to 10 more recent games than the rest of the season. But obviously, it's still going to value like the first 10 games of the season as well. So I think if you're valuing Villanova without Gillespie, it's probably a 9-10 point spread. And I do think the over is a pretty good bet for sure.
All right. Well, there you go. Liking that one. Glad we're on the same side there. Next one, Oral Roberts versus Arkansas. Arkansas laying about 11.5 points. The total is 159. You know, the funny thing about this one, and we briefly discussed this one, and I think we're on the same side. Oral Roberts is going to take a lot of bets this week because of what they did to Ohio State and Florida. But what they failed to see is the turnover margin was -10 for Oral Roberts. For Ohio State that game. So Oral Roberts had +10, and they had +8 against the Florida, and both those games still went overtime. Ohio State couldn't even hit a free throw, and this game was close. I think this is one of those games where Arkansas plays at a high pace and doesn't have any really problems with them. Plays in a tougher conference and shoots at a higher percent. This one could be some trucking going on here. I'm going to wait myself and see how many bets come in on Oral Roberts and see how low this spread can get, because I think it can get into the 10 area, and then I'll probably throttle on Arkansas. So what are your thoughts?
So I think this is the personification, probably one of the best examples I've ever seen of valuing sample size in March Madness. So basically, Oral Roberts the entire season has never put together a performance in adjusted shot quality, which is basically offense minus defense adjusted, above the 75th percentile once. Not once. But the last two games against Florida and Ohio State, they were above the 90th percentile and actually were expected to win both of those games. So like they actually played good enough to beat both of those teams. So they are obviously pretty hot, I guess you could say, based off that 2-game sample. But Arkansas's average has been the 90th percentile or above on every single game this season, like if you just found the season average. So I think they are the bet. I have them, the spread, or the shot quality algorithm has a spread at 17, and it also likes the under a little bit. I think it has the over-under at 151, which I guess is a little below what Vegas has there. And it just doesn't expect Oral Roberts to shoot out of their mind like they have the last few games.
Well, if this is a blowout, the game will go under, because Arkansas is just going to slow it down when it's statistically final, right? So I agree with that 100%. Next one, Syracuse versus Houston. Houston's about -6. The total is 140 here. So my thoughts is Houston's not the best shooting team, and it showed against Rutgers. They barely won that game. But Syracuse has been shooting out of their minds. 50% from three their last two games on an average, and 49.4% just overall the last 3 games. Craziness. But Houston's had their stinkers away from home this year, but they've also consistently been a top 10 team. I like that Houston can defend the 3, ranking 12th in the nation, allowing 29.2% to go in. That's pretty good because Syracuse has been relying on the 3 a little bit. So I'm going to lean to Houston, and I'm going to lean to the under. I have the total about 138. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so In terms of the Houston play, I do like that because, interesting enough, I think defending the 3 is something that's actually not consistent. I think a lot of the 3-point defense is really dependent on, this is a good shooter taking it. But actually, in terms of Houston, I think Sampson is one of the best examples of teaching a defense how to defend the 3. So he's consistently, I believe, the last 5 or 4 seasons been in the top 50 in defending the 3-point shot. And this season, based off the quality of looks teams are getting against Houston from the 3-point line, he ranks first. So Houston ranks first in terms of quality of defense at the 3-point line. So that's why I actually do like the lean towards Houston, even though the shot quality algorithm has the spread as a 6-point game. If I'm just thinking logically, I do like that lean towards Houston. And another reason I like towards Houston is Cuse, the last 2 games, based off the quality of looks, you could expect, at least that San Diego State game when Buddy Boeheim went 7 for 10, they were supposed to lose that game and the West Virginia game. So I think they're playing a little over their heads currently, and I'd expect a little bit of negative aggression towards them.
All right. What's your total in that one?
So the total in that one I actually have at 144. So I think that's is that the over? I think that's the over. So it's a little different than what you were saying.
All right. Well, sounds good. A little opposite in that side. Sunday's games, Florida State versus Michigan. Michigan is 2.5 to 3. It's really been bouncing back and forth. The total is about 144.5. I'll let you start this one.
Wait, what's the spread? Wait, let me pull this up.
Michigan minus 3. Total is 144.5.
So for the Michigan game, the shot quality algorithm also has the spread at 3, so pretty much no difference to Vegas on this one. In terms of the total, the shot quality algorithm has the total of 137, which I think leans towards the under, correct? Yes. Yeah, because the total is 144 basically. So yeah, I do like the under in that one.
Okay. Does your website factor in the liver's injury?
Yes, it does, because they've had a big enough sample without him. So like Gillespie's, I think a little bit of it. Actually, no, Gillespie I think was out longer than Livers. So I guess it's a similar example to Gillespie. So it really just depends on how big of a sample they've had without him. And I guess I don't know how long Livers has been hurt, like 4 or 5 games.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So
yes.
Yeah, it's been about the same. It was close, I think.
Okay, yeah, so basically it's the same example as Gillespie. So maybe the line would shift a little more towards Florida State than even at, like, Florida State, maybe Michigan by 1 or 2 instead of 3.
All right, well, there you go. So, I've been really looking forward to this matchup, and I think if there was a healthy Livers, I would probably have it at, like, a 2.5 spread as it is right now. But I have a lean towards Florida State here because I don't like how Michigan finished their season, losing 3 of their last 5 games there. And I don't like how Hunter Dickinson and Franz Wagner could struggle against, with the high percentage shot against tall guys, against a really, really tall team inside. They rely on, things like rebounds and easy shots because they're bigger, and unfortunately they're going to have a lot of tough time shooting over Florida State is what I'm thinking. And Florida State's a fast-paced team, too. They turn the ball over, but at a pretty high clip. Michigan doesn't force turnovers, only ranking 337th on defense, forcing only about 14% of possessions to turn here. So the other thing that makes me like Florida State a little bit more is the fact that they can shoot the ball about as well as Michigan from 3, and they're going to rebound about the same anyway. I think the fact that the Wolverines are without their senior leader, Isaiah Livers, is going to finally take a toll. And I like how Leonard Hamilton 7-2 against the spread as a dog, with 5 outright wins in the NCAA tournament. So I have it at pick'em, meaning I pretty much like Florida State here. So I think
I think you swayed me, actually, and then even when I looked at the data a little bit, like, it does seem pretty obvious that Florida State is a really good play despite what the shot quality algorithm is outputting right now, because even the games they've played recently, Michigan, the LSU game, the Texas Southern game, they are not getting great quality shots. Like, they are, if I'm looking at the slope right now of their adjusted shot quality, and it's leaning very negative, while Florida State is kind of on the up. They played very, very well in that Colorado game, got really, really high-quality shots. They're in the 97th percentile offensive shot quality, 96th in defensive shot quality in that game. So they're really playing really well right now, while Michigan's kind of on the downward slope. So I actually do like that play to pick them too. Actually, you swayed me a little bit.
All right, well, there you go. Glad to do that. If I'm right, if not, then oh well. But next game, I'm really curious to hear your total on this one too. Creighton versus Gonzaga. Gonzaga is about minus 13.5. The total on this is 158.5 here, my man. I mean, Gonzaga, what can you say, right? I mean, I haven't seen a lot of teams match up to them too well. They're the most efficient team since the 2017 Villanova Wildcats. What are your thoughts on this one?
So Creighton, interesting enough, they were grading out as one of the most undervalued teams on the shot quality system up until the last 6-7 games of the season. So before then, they were consistently an adjusted shot quality team in the 90th percentile or above. They were top 10 in the country, always. And then recently, the last 6 games, they've just been tanking. They have not been getting the same quality of shots that they were before, while Gonzaga obviously consistently has been the top, been getting consistently the top quality shots on the offensive defensive end. So right now, the shot quality side has the spread at 9 points. But it's a little interesting because Creighton's kind of on a downward slope while Gonzaga's just consistently been the best. So I'm not super confident in that spread, actually. And then the total I have at 157, which actually is exactly the same as Vegas, basically, I think.
Oh, interesting. Well, for me, I don't think that there's a chance that Gonzaga doesn't score 90 here. And the question is, will Creighton score 70 for the total? I think yes. I mean, what you got to look at here is Gonzaga's playing teams, and they're scoring 90 when the game is statistically final with 5 minutes left. And so they could score 100 points every game. Now they're playing a power conference like the Big East in basketball, and so you expect more competition and them to possibly keep the Zags going a little bit longer into this game. I like the fact that Gonzaga ranks second in seconds per possession. They're the second fastest getting the ball out of their hands towards the hoop. And Creighton ranks 42nd at 16.1 seconds per possession, which is obviously in the top 12, 13 percentile of playing with speed. So just because of that, I like the over. But I also like the Gonzaga team total, which you're going to get about 87 points, 87 to 73-ish, something like that, which is about 160, because I think this total is going to creep up. So you're going to get a good team total on Gonzaga as well. So I'm taking the team total over on Gonzaga, and I'm going to play the over 158 for a pretty large play. So, I mean, that's where I'm looking at it right here. Let's move on to the final game then. Or no, we have two more games. We have Oregon versus USC. USC about -2.5. The total on this is 139.5. I mean, in this caliber of a game, this spread is just saying 2.5 right now. It's pretty much opened at 2.5. I think it might have been like 1 and it went to 2.5 and half hour later or something. So I'm going to call it 2.5. It really makes me want to stay away from this one. As far as a betting standpoint, I really like how Dana Altman coached that last game against Iowa. His team, yes, did play fast and played right into the deficiencies of Iowa, which was smart, but Oregon also hit a lot of shots. But my biggest thing is USC was awesome against Kansas, but shot quality just said that they shouldn't have been that good. So that's interesting to me to hear your take on that. But what I will say is Oregon State ranks 18th in 3-point percentage this year at 37.9%. Sorry, Oregon, not Oregon State. 38% about, which is 18th in the league. And USC can't stop the three that well. They rank 160th against the three, allowing 33.6% to go in. So just because of that, I'd be scared to bet USC. And I probably have a slight lean to Oregon right here. Both coaches, Andy Enfield is 9-0 against the spread in the tournament, and Dana Altman 15-5-1 against the spread in this tournament. So, from a coaching standpoint, you don't want to bet against either one of these guys. But I have USC winning, I guess, 70 to 67.5 right at the spread anyway. What are your thoughts on this?
So the way the shot quality spread output of this one was 69-69. So basically it's OT in this game, but I guess the spread leans towards Oregon. And it's interesting enough because this is the epitome of example where Vegas would not be overvaluing one team, but would be overvaluing both teams because of their most recent games. Because technically Oregon, based off the quality of shots, was not supposed to beat Iowa. And technically based off the quality of shots, USC was not supposed to beat Kansas by 30. So it's kind of interesting. But I guess because the disparity in the Kansas-USC game was so much greater than the Oregon game, it kind of makes sense that shot quality would like Oregon more in this one. So it's a lean slightly towards Oregon. And the total I have at 69-69, so 138 is the total.
We've been leaning a lot of favorites, so maybe we need to lean this one as a dog. So I like what you're thinking on that one too, man. And Oregon's sample, they had a lot of guys out like in different parts of the year, so they might be a little bit better than some of their stats show as well. All right, we have the last one here, UCLA versus Alabama. The spread's about -6 to -6.5-ish. Total 145. I'll let you get started on this one first, Simon.
Yeah, so I have. So we do have a little. Oh no, it opened at 4.5 for Bama, and now it's at 6.5. Oh damn! So the shot quality spread was at 7, obviously when it got released, and it has Bama just by a significant amount. Basically, Bama just gets such higher quality shots in general. UCLA loves their mid-range. Right now, UCLA, they've just consistently been around the 75th percentile in terms of adjusted shot quality percentile, while Bama's been averaging that 90th. So So the system just likes Bama more, and they think they get higher quality shots. My one fear with Alabama, though, is just the variability factor because they shoot so many threes. You just never know if two of Petty's threes don't fall, if two of Quinterly's threes don't fall. It's just a lot of variability. So it's a little scary, but there's actually no play for me anyway. If you go 6.5 to 7, it's obviously really similar.
All right, well, good, because the spread is getting a little up there, and it looks like it went towards your number, which is a credit to your website anyway. I have Bama winning 76 to 69 from pure metrics anyway. That's right at 145 too. So not a huge.
I actually
go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually had one of my one of my followers on Twitter contact me about this, and he was telling me that basically, he's been tracking my spreads in Vegas, and there's been, over, 80% of them have moved towards my spread in the last, 4 weeks, which I have no idea how or why, but it's kind of crazy that the line, I got to start driving them early, I guess, because they just consistently keep moving towards the shot quality spread, which I have no idea why. It's just kind of crazy.
That's why we always say hit them early and get them late. Right? That's the way you do it, man. It's the best way to beat the books is getting the opening value. And if you're already going to be 80% right on the live movement, that sounds like profit to me. So great stuff on that, man. Well, great job covering these games, Simon. Fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast and breaking these down. Where could our listeners find your information about all the games in the future and anything else you do?
Yeah, so the predictions for every game is on the shot quality site. You can actually look up every also possible matchup. So let's say you wanted to see the shot quality expected score for Gonzaga, USC, or Gonzaga, whatever. You can find every possible matchup in the future too, if you wanted to look at that. The site, it's only $74.95 for the rest of the season. You just go to shotquality.com and go to the prediction page or the March Madness page, and you'll be able to access it. And then my Twitter is just shot_quality.
Shot_quality. That is awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Simon. I learned a lot. I really appreciate all your insights and looking at it from this perspective because it's a lot different than anything else that we're used to.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you for having me. And
now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by jazzsports.ag. For a 100% sign-up bonus, please visit Jazz Sports and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms, conditions, and location apply. My friends, we had to bring back the Sharp Side of the Force to talk a little bit about these Sweet 16 games. So let's get right into it then. Oregon State versus Loyola. Oregon State is actually a sharper side. 50% of the bets on Oregon State, but 83% of the money. Baylor versus Nova. Baylor went from -6.5 to about -7, but only 27% of the tickets are on Baylor and 94% of the money. Sharp money on the Oral Roberts plus 11-ish, 11.5, 38% of the tickets on Oral Roberts, 63% of the money. You know, I disagree with that one. Syracuse versus Houston. Syracuse, 50% of the bets at the +6 on Syracuse, but 72% of the money. And I also want to disclaim that there's not a ton of bets in yet. So there can always be some syndicates that change this, and we're going to cover this again tomorrow. Let's move on to Sunday. Creighton versus Gonzaga. 56% of the bets are on Gonzaga at -13.5 and 61% of the money. Florida State at the +3 down to +2.5. 41% of the tickets are on Florida State, 77% of the money. Next game, UCLA versus Alabama. Alabama was at -5.5, now -6.5. 48% of the tickets on Alabama, 86% of the money. And you have USC opened at -1, but that was gone quick. It's at about -2.5-ish now. 41% of the tickets on USC and 62% of the money. Let's look at a little sharp totals for the NCAA tournament here, and we'll go back to Saturday. Anything sticking out? We have the under 126 down to 125 in the Oregon State versus Loyola. 28% of the tickets on the under, 79% of the money. Villanova versus Baylor. little bit on the under. 35% of the tickets are on the under and 51% of the money under 141 there. That flipped. It was on the over first, but it's kind of back to the under. We'll see if that changes later. Sharp money on Oral Roberts versus Arkansas. Pretty even. No sharp money. It's hovering around 158 to 159. 53% of the tickets are on the under, but 57% of the money. And then sharp money on the Syracuse versus Houston over 140. 42% of the tickets are on the over. 84% of the money. Kind of disagree with that one. Let's see here. Sunday, Creighton versus Gonzaga. Under 158. 31% of the tickets are on the under, but 95% of the money. Those could just people just betting all unders like they did the first round of the tournament as well. Just remember that unders were so hot the first round of the tournament. Michigan under 145 to 144. 65% of the tickets are on the under and 70% of the money. So that's pretty close. And not enough information on UCLA versus Alabama and Oregon versus USC. Over 139.5. 59% of the tickets are on the over, but 67% of the money. Not a ton. And, these are bettors that just necessarily public, but there are people that sports bet a lot, probably some semi-sharper people on there. Still waiting to see where these lines are going to go. So a lot more information to come. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Really appreciate it. If you have any other questions or if you want us to break any other games down, please tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week and go get some winners.